Wonderful. All right. Well, with that, let's go ahead and get her going here. So thank you for coming out tonight, and those of you joining us online, thank you for that. We're going to get into this discussion and kind of focus on why we're here tonight, how it is that we do things, and then who we are. And then I'm going to introduce the talent tonight, which is the other speaker. So I'm here in an introductory fashion to introduce this topic. And the why we're here tonight is really important because partially it's so that we can have a conversation centered around what's on the screen, women, wealth, and wisdom. Whether we plan for things or not, things are going to happen. And there is going to be a tremendous wealth transfer in our lifetimes. And what's really important about this is that women are going to be the overwhelming participants in deciding how it is that money gets repositioned for their betterment or their families, or how it also gets left behind for a legacy. So that's why we're here. And to kind of explain this a little bit more, I'm going to tell a little bit of a personal story here. So this lovely couple, you can tell how handsome that gentleman is. That's my father. So that's John and Kathy Mildred, and they are statistically your typical married couple in the sense that one of the two participants in the relationship controlled a lot of the finances, and the other kind of let them do it because they just trusted that it was going to be okay. And statistically, it didn't mean that my mom didn't control the finances by any means, because she was very much a part of it, but she wasn't an active participant up until about 15 years ago, when I started to become their financial advisor and really encouraged Mom to be a part of all of this planning so that her values could be brought to the table and make sure everything's in good order there. A little backstory. My mom, my whole adult life, my mother was very sick. She had numerous surgeries, countless illnesses. And so my dad, on the other hand, other than being a little bit heavier set, kind of like me, just enjoyed the food and the beer a little. He was very healthy. So naturally, we all kind of thought, hey, the natural order of things, because of Mom's health, Mom's going to predecease Dad, and Dad, who's already doing a bulk of the planning, is going to be able to just continue on, and everything's going to be okay. Well, unfortunately, a tragic accident or a tragic circumstance happened, and my father, while getting a knee repair at the hospital, picked up a virus, and suddenly, 3 days later, he's no longer with us. And my mom, who was recovering from a pretty major surgery, was now trying to deal with rehab, the loss of her husband, and not knowing what the heck's going on here. So she had to count on a lot of different people, her family, financial advisor, thankfully a trusted one, to help her through this. But Mom made some pretty major decisions about that money that maybe she and Dad wouldn't have done together. But she made some changes that kind of had a ripple effect in the family. Ultimately, what that kind of told me as I was prepping for this was, as they were doing all of their financial planning, and thankfully Dad did do a lot of great things, Mom was taken care of, Mom had income, Dad had a life insurance policy. There's all kinds of good stuff that happened there. But they didn't necessarily include everybody in the picture for that legacy plan that maybe Mom wanted to while Dad was alive. And so when Dad passed away, once Mom got through some of the grieving and could really focus on some of this stuff, we had some conversations on, Mom, what do you want done with this money? How do you want this to go? Which is a pretty interesting conversation to have, knowing that you're one of the kids and all that sort of stuff. But Mom made some pretty interesting changes, and it was awesome in my view. But it wasn't awesome in everybody's view, and she didn't necessarily want to tell the whole family about it. And so she figured she had time to have that conversation. Well, unfortunately, Mom only made it about 11 months after Dad passed away. And so she is now gone, and then her legacy was set up the way she wanted it, but she wasn't really vocal about that. But my whole point in explaining this story is that women they've got about a 90% chance of being the last decision makers on how their finances are going to be spread out for themselves or for their family. And so it's really important for women to really take a part of this financial planning process. So a little bit about, that was kind of why we work together, why it is that we're here, what we do, how we work with folks. We in our practice, we really like to work with folks to try to help them make the most of everything that they've been given. And that looks different for everyone. But oddly, statistics show that women aren't nearly as involved as their male counterparts in the financial planning process. And so we want to make sure, like I said, that they are fully educated on all of the moving parts and all the things that they should be focused on, given the fact that there's going to be a tremendous wealth transfer to them and then to the next generation. And so by working together with our clients, we can help provide guidance on these type of matters, which we help match their needs with their goals so that financial clarity can be achievable. Who we are, Thrivent Financial. A lot of you probably already know who we are or have some kind of understanding of what we do and the things that we work with people on. But we are a holistic financial services company, and we are membership owned, and we have a common bond of Christianity. We work with Christians by providing financial advice, investments, insurance, banking, and generosity programs. And so that way we can help people be really good with helping them out with giving the most of what they've been given here. Tonight there's going to be 3 of us presenting. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Colin Mildred. I've been with Thrivent for about 15 years. I do go to church here. I'm married to my lovely bride, Erica, who is here in attendance tonight. We have 2 daughters, Emma and Jordan, who go to school here. And so, also going to introduce Lindsay Humbert. She is a community engagement leader. She lives in Dallas. She's married to her husband Nate. Apologize. That's it, whatever. And Lindsay, 4 years with Thrivent? 4 years with Thrivent. Very involved in the community and in her church, but I'll let her tell her story a little bit when she comes up here. And then also Ginny Chandler, who is an associate agent with Thrivent. She's fairly new to Thrivent, but she's not new to financial services. She's got a degree in finances, and she has an extensive background in nonprofit management. She joined Thrivent because her values matched up with the way Thrivent does business, and I'll let her explain a little bit more of that when she gets officially introduced here in a moment. So the program tonight, we set this up into 5 different stages of the program. Ginny is going to do the bulk of the presentation tonight, but we're going to try to share some financial principles and some other important concepts around security, setbacks that can happen, that wealth transfer that I've been referring to, and then I believe Lindsay's going to finish it off with working with a trusted advisor. So with that, I am going to introduce Ginny, and please bear with us as we switch the microphone here in just a second.
Hopefully this is coming through okay. I don't know if y'all are able to tell me that. All right. Okay. Thank you. All right. Maybe that's better? Okay. So it's such a pleasure to meet y'all. So Colin introduced me, Ginny Chandler. I also live in Dallas, and one of the aspects that he alluded to was my background in nonprofit management. And so just to help make that connection, one of the things that I realized that just became very evident over time, just in the different spaces where I was working in nonprofit work, was that there were a couple of things that if they were missing, a community wouldn't truly be able to strengthen itself from the inside and grow. And so oftentimes we hear about education, how that can grow from the inside and expand outward, health. But then that financial component, I noticed was really missing, because without that financial clarity, without that financial stability, it's interesting how a community can get so far by themselves, but eventually they would need money from the outside, which can kind of create its own dependency model. So that was one of the things that a friend of mine who had worked for Thrivent for a while had told me numerous times about the company. And as I got to know more about it, I saw how Thrivent merges community with individuals, families, nonprofits, so that a community can become stronger. And just through Colin, he was sharing that the church, y'all's church, is trying to bring that vocational piece that each of you carry through your careers, through your experiences, and sharing that with the body to strengthen the body. And so it's that same general concept. If we each play our roles, we can help strengthen ourselves as a church body, which God wants to use. He wants to move through us to reach the community. But that same principle that he built in society also works outside of that church context. Maybe not quite as well, but that's where it came together for me. And that's where, the reason why I made what I would say somewhat of a career shift, but truly my passion is people, strengthening people, and then thereby strengthening communities. It almost feels like Reaganomics, but maybe a little different. So, but we'll get into, Colin introduced the topics for tonight. And so one of the things, if you will, okay, so common challenges that women face. I appreciate the statistic that Colin brought up initially was that, about 90% of women will be the ones who are going to be solely responsible for all of those assets, either their own or their family's finances. And with that concern, I know that wind, it gets that side, and with that, the concern, that lack of involvement, there's also what we as women, generally there is the divvying up of responsibilities. And so we're generally the ones who will leave our careers to care for growing children or to care for aging parents, which I think that's something that we take pleasure in. However, by leaving the workforce, that means we're making less over our lifetimes. And then that translates into generally having less in our retirement accounts. However, women generally live longer than men. And so we actually are the ones that need that retirement to last over our lifetimes. So that's kind of the impetus for this conversation, and why it's so important is, there's that lack of true involvement for some in the financial planning over that lifetime, but yet some of those key pieces that seem to be missing for women specifically. And so these are areas that can easily be addressed, but we first have to acknowledge them. We have to recognize them before we can actually build a plan around them, which that's going to lead us into a conversation about security. And so security actually comes from, just our perceptions that looks different for everyone, and there are different roots to what makes us feel secure. And so that means we're going to actually have to reflect on our relationship with money. So I want to take a step back here and just ask a question for us to consider. And I'm going to take this moment to say, the folder that you got, there are some pieces of paper in there. And so if you want, jot down just some ideas that come to mind, because we're going to try to connect some of those concepts along the way. But I want you to think about what is important to you. So it doesn't have, nothing in particular, but just think about, what are some of those things that are really important to me? And then as you write some things down, I also want you to kind of transition into what maybe some of those things that are financially important to you. So given your attendance tonight and knowing what the topic was going to be, I think probably most of you came in with a mindset that had something to do with finances. And so I want you to now reflect on, where are you confident in your finances?
Confident or competent?
I'm going to say confident. That's a great distinction, though. Thank you. Sorry, and if anyone is online, she asked the difference between confident or competent. And so we're going to go with confident. Where do you feel confident financially? All right, and then conversely, where do you feel concern financially, or where do you find yourself worrying financially? Now, this is where I would say there is a connection between each of these areas, because this shows what's important to us, both those areas where we have confidence and also those areas where we have concerns or worries. Those reveal what's important to us. And it's something that we are going to kind of continue to dig into. But I do want to kind of make the connection of, again, what we're talking about tonight. So, for example, like how this fits into the larger picture. So Colin and I, we're financial advisors, and we have the experience and the background, the knowledge to develop a great, what we would consider maybe a great plan. However, if it doesn't match up with what's important to you and what's valuable to you, it's not going to be a good plan for you. And so I do want us all to recognize that relationship between what could be considered, oh, this is a good plan, versus what is actually the best plan for you. And so you may hear, just in general through the news or through articles that you read, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. But what we really need to do is make sure that we are addressing what's important to you and what's valuable, because that's going to take into account all of those areas where you feel confident, but also where you have concern and worry, because if those things aren't all addressed, the plan is going to have holes. So hopefully that kind of ties it all together well. So considering this, I want us to now, I want us to build actually on some of those first questions and take a moment to consider what security means to you. I just kind of mentioned that when tying everything together, but what does that mean to you? What does security look like to you? And maybe not even what it looks like. What does it feel like? So I'm curious, was anyone surprised by some of the things that came up? No? Yes? Okay. So what came to mind for some of you? What is security? Yes?
I put peace in the storm.
Peace in the storm. Okay. I like that. I like visual images. Thanks. Someone else. It may not be an image. It may be something like concrete that makes you feel secure.
Mine would be to be secure and self-reliant for myself throughout my lifetime.
Secure and self-reliant for yourself throughout your lifetime.
I don't have to worry about my kids or everything else taking care of things I need. I'll be secure in the picture.
Gotcha. So I'm going to repeat just in case someone's online. So not having to worry about your kids or your grandkids. Yeah, and you have been able to take care of everything. Yeah. Yeah. Taking care of the people that you love. Absolutely. Anybody else? Yes.
I have peace of mind regarding what I can control in my own capacity.
Yes, peace of mind and what you can control in your own capacity. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, there's something about having agency, the ability to do something when you can. Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else?
As a
Sorry, can you repeat? I missed one of the words. In retirement, having a what? Having a life income plan. Yeah. Yes. 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 And again, for people online, just a summary of that, like when you're retired, you still need that income, and that income stream can give you a source of security. Absolutely. That's good planning. Thanks. We'll kind of keep this dialogue going because while, financially we can address security, and we'll get to that in a bit more detail in a moment, but we're going to continue exploring our perceptions because, again, our sense of security flows from our perceptions. And so I'd mentioned earlier, I really like images. I like illustrations because that can, honestly, it can kind of create a more robust conversation and get you to think about things that you may not have just naturally gotten to. And so this is a continuum, and you'll see in the middle it has stable, and then we go one direction, it goes towards surplus, and the other direction, it goes towards surviving. And so I want you to now, again, this is another sheet in your folder, but I want you to kind of make a little mark on where you feel like you are today financially. And I do want to say this is completely subjective. There's no dollar amount for each little bucket. It is completely subjective. All right, so where did you find yourselves? Where did you find yourself putting a mark?
Stable.
Stable? Yes. Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah. Yes.
Stable to secure, somewhere in there.
Yes.
Maybe secure.
Yes. Great. Anybody else? Yeah. What's that?
Stable.
Stable. No, this is a great tool to just kind of sit and reflect, like, ooh, where do I really feel like I am? Okay, so let's talk about moving towards surplus. What could happen to make you move towards surplus or make you feel like you are in surplus? Maybe besides winning the lottery. Yeah.
I think if we have the ability, like if a cause that we cared about just hit us, we, it wasn't
Yeah.
like something planned, but something that we just heard of.
Yeah.
Just the ability to just without a thought say, yes, let's give to this. I mean,
Yes.
I think if we were in surplus, we'd be able to do things like
Yes.
that.
Yes. Not to have that period of time where a decision must be made. Yeah. That makes sense. Anybody else? Moving towards surplus? Yes. 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 I know that does feel good, doesn't it? Yeah. Absolutely. All right, so we are going to have to talk about the other end of the spectrum. So what might happen to cause you to feel like you were surviving? Yeah. Yeah.
Major health problems.
Yes. It's interesting how much more quickly those things came. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That will be a topic of conversation for sure. Yeah. Yes. 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 I mean, like truly great feedback, and I'm glad that we, have had a chance to sit down with, questions like this. Sometimes they're not the most fun to sit down and think about, but it is necessary. And truly the goal of financial planning is to recognize what creates stability, because to be able to address those areas with financial solutions, we can use those financial solutions as a wedge to place, like right there at stable, to keep us from moving backwards. Or we can put that wedge right there at secure to keep us from moving backwards. And so that is the goal of good financial planning, of financial advisors. That's our goal. We want to make sure that we understand where people are coming from. We have to understand what we value. We have to understand what's important. And from there, we can put a wedge in that place to keep us from moving backwards. All right. So again, just kind of unpacking that a little bit more. This is, our strategy is to protect. So to protect assets. Again, with that wedge being put in there, protection becomes that key component from moving backwards. So in a minute, we're actually going to lay these stages across a lifespan. But this is actually the concept. So we have to have a firm foundation, and to be able to protect finances and the things in life that we value. So that would include like your earning potential, your life, the lives of your family members, and then even that lifetime accumulation. And generally, we think of that for retirement, but there are also other goals that are in there. Those are some of those valuable things that we want to protect. And each of these pieces, protection, accumulation, distribution, legacy, they're integral pieces that will set us up for just the subsequent stages in a long-term strategy. So making protection the key, even with significant accumulation, if it's not protected, you may not feel completely secure. You may still feel like there is some exposure. And so, again, there are strategies to put in place through financial planning that can help mitigate, that feeling of instability. And then, truly, the intent there is if we protect what's in place, then again, you can more securely accumulate. And then you can think about a more robust distribution strategy. And then from there, hopefully, building a solid legacy plan where you can use a majority of your assets and make sure that you are the one directing where each of those dollars go, and not having an outside voice like the IRS who redirects some of those funds. So that's the idea. Now, again, earlier again, going back to that wedge, we want to make sure that we protect ourselves from setbacks that can occur. So again, protecting you, your financial situation, that's what a good, solid financial plan can do. And by implementing those different solutions, again, I know I've said this a couple of times already, but your assets can be protected. And that enables you and your family, again, to accumulate, then to build a good distribution plan, and then to legacy. And so just being mindful of those components when you consider just your long-term strategies. All right. So are there any questions about these layers that we've talked about? Okay. All right. So with setbacks and that wedge that's there, now there are a variety of factors that affect or impact the security that we feel, the security that we feel like we're building. And it's interesting how setbacks can make us reflect and, again, expose those areas or help us more clearly see those things that we value. For instance, it's already come up tonight, 2020. Did you see it coming? So I'm curious, from each, there are, a handful of people in the room, and we each felt the impact of 2020 a bit differently. Is anyone open to sharing how 2020 just impacted you or impacted you and your family?
I don't like that I lost all my civil liberties.
Yeah, she had mentioned, I don't like how I feel like I lost all of my civil liberty. So yeah, just the freedom to do and live the way you're wanting to. Yeah.
I think the thing that saddened me the most was watching the impact on our children.
The impact on your children, yeah.
The insecurity, not just my kids, and
Yeah.
you try to say, things, but when all of a sudden their life changes so drastically.
Yes.
Now they're told they have to wear certain things in certain places and stay away from people and not hug people. And,
Yeah.
that's what children do. And
Yeah.
it's like their whole world just got turned upside down, and we have a hard enough time as adults trying to
Yes.
make sense of it all.
Yes.
For the children, it's just so saddening. And I personally had a friend whose teenage son committed suicide. And
Yeah.
so it's just so hard to see how 2020 impacts and still is impacting
Yes.
the children.
Yes, it does. It seems to take away innocence. It's leaving me pretty speechless. I'm sorry to hear about your friend's family. To not be able to be a kid and to be robbed of those experiences where you get to explore, but then to be told, no, you can't do that. That's dangerous around every turn because of something you can't even see. You're right. It's difficult for us to grapple with, but to try to explain that to a child, you're right. Yeah.
Well, I don't think we're out of it yet by a long shot.
Sure.
There's possibilities of layoffs coming in a couple of years now.
Yeah.
And loss of income from this year.
Yeah. Layoffs in the future from loss of income now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know, I'm not sure if anyone in this room felt it, but even, if you do have a job, just the tension of, am I going to continue having a job, or will they lower my pay so that we can all still remain employed? That is a very serious reality. I have a friend who, he stands by the company that he works for, and he respects the leadership so much. And one of the things that the leadership did in order to, not have layoffs was to lower everyone's salary for a time. But again, significant impact. And while you can still keep your job, there's still that tension that exists for quite some time. And earlier you had mentioned the stock market. Does anybody remember what happened in March? Yeah. Substantially, yes. And so for those people who were anticipating retirement, that would be just, something that you look forward to for years and years, and in a moment to see that shift. Exactly. And wonder how long am I going to, how much longer will my money last? Absolutely. Absolutely. And, even, yes, just with the pandemic, just the loss of life that's happened, it's been a lot. So there are ramifications that happen to us personally that are financial in nature, and I don't want this to be too heavy, at least from the financial standpoint. There are solutions that can be put in place to mitigate some of those vulnerabilities. Again, we didn't see 2020 coming. We didn't see that there was going to be a pandemic. It wasn't localized to one country. This is worldwide, which is something that is, I mean, just not having a context for that. So, but still, with a good plan in place, you're able to mitigate some of that risk, some of that exposure, some of those vulnerabilities. Now, also, there are certain ages where we can plan well, because setbacks, you had mentioned specifically, just in retirement and watching the stock market crash, like that can be pretty scary. But we're going to now shift to a different illustration, again in your folders, of financial milestones. Now, you'll see on this image that we start at an unidentified age, because we don't want anyone to feel like, while we want to get it started as soon as possible, we don't want anyone to feel like they have completely missed the boat. So as we move further to the right, we start at the first age, which is 59 and a half. And so here we're going to kind of go back and forth. And I'm curious, anyone want to share what is significant about age 59 and a half?
Take money out of your savings, your 401k, without having to pay a penalty.
Nice. Yes. You're right. So at 59 and a half, early distribution penalties, they go away. Absolutely right. Nice. Okay. So 62. What's significant about age 62? Yes. I love it. You have it. So at age 62, it's the first year that you can actually take Social Security at a percentage, but that's the first year where you can take Social Security. You are right. Age 65. Yes. That is the age where a lot of people do go on Medicare. Now, if you are still working full-time, you still have health care elsewhere, you don't have to take Medicare then, but yes. Age 65 is when a lot of people do go on Medicare. All right. Now the next one, age 66, 67. Yes. Full Social Security, depending on when you were born. So this, the Social Security Department, they have a calculation that they use depending on when you were born, not just the year, but even the month. And so you don't have to retire within this age range, but that is when full Social Security is granted to you within that age range, generally.
Right, then you can earn also, that income, limit on what you can earn, you take away from your Social Security if you still work.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, which one is that when you work the place that you want and not at Social Security?
I'm sorry, ask.
Well, the 66, 67, no, but what's basically the red, you can work as much as you want, earn as much as you want, not have your Social Security depleted.
66 and 67.
No, that's not my question. That's okay. Keep going.
Okay. You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. So age 70.
Right, is that 32% bonus?
Yes. So at this point, at age 70, you do. This is the last year that you would want to delay any Social Security benefits, because at this point, you're not going to get any more benefit. But if you don't take Social Security then, you've just left money on the table. So, absolutely, spot on. All right, what about 70 and a half? I know, and that's okay. That just happened this year. Mm-hmm. So, and if you've already retired, then it may not be as much on your radar. So just this year, required minimum distributions that previously were required at 70 and a half have now been bumped up to 72. But there's still something significant about age 70 and a half. Does anybody want to take a guess? Another guess? So qualified charitable distributions. This is when you may want to consider adding that to your overall tax strategy, because that can help you come out ahead there. All right, so we already gave away 72, and now we will, although I do want to say, if you have any Roth accounts, those are excluded from that required minimum distribution. Now, the death of a spouse. So when this occurs, financial accounts that are in place typically move to the surviving spouse without any issues or tax implications. But then at the death of the surviving spouse, that's when things change a bit. So without prior planning, at this juncture is when much of the accumulated wealth could be redirected, like what we were talking about earlier, to Uncle Sam. And so the second passing is when those assets are generally divvied up between beneficiaries, and if not planned maybe well, then Uncle Sam will become one of the beneficiaries, whether you intended him to become that or not. And then legacy. So again, with planning, you can preserve much of your assets and direct them to where you want them to go, like we had just talked about. And that's going to lead us into a conversation about wealth transfer. So again, we want to make sure that we're using prudent strategies that take into consideration what's valuable to us, what's important to us, what we want to preserve, especially with what's inevitable in life. All right. So wealth transfer. Now, over the next few decades, this was a pretty shocking statistic to me. There's going to be an estimated $30 trillion being transferred from the original owners to the next generation. Now, that's not from one spouse to the surviving spouse. That is literally from, say, parents to children or grandchildren. And this figure is actually referring to, just, again, $30 trillion. Sorry, it's a lot of money to be passed down. And so that is actually a part of a study that, or some research that was done by a group, RBC Wealth Management, titled Women and Wealth Transfer. So we're going to talk about some of the other statistics that came up in their study. So 36% of women who have inherited wealth receive no guidance at all. And then only 22% of women actually have a comprehensive wealth transfer plan in place. That means that there is quite a bit of money that the government could become a beneficiary of without a wealth transfer plan in place. And also only 41% of mothers are confident in their children's ability to manage an inheritance. And I'm curious, are there any statistics, or what statistics here are you like, oh, that's really interesting to see that? What really stands out to you? And okay, I saw you shaking your head.
I don't think that most of the children that I know,
Yeah.
I'll say this people in my own circle, know how to manage their money today, let
Gotcha.
alone an inheritance.
Yeah, and I see some other heads nodding in the room. And so just in case anyone's listening online, Kate was saying, I don't know if anyone in my circle, the children, yes, who know how to manage their money now, much less an inheritance. Sure. Anybody else? Anything stand out?
I think that of that first statistic, just that how quickly that 30 trillion is going to pass, just in the 3 to 4 decades.
Yeah.
That's a very short amount of time.
You're right, it is. I actually didn't consider it from that angle, and you're right. That is quite a bit of money to pass in such a short period of time. So we are next going to go to another fun illustration, and for this, Lindsay is actually going to pass out our 10 dimes. And I don't know if any of you have heard that there is a shortage in coins. And so we're going to use something else. We're going to use some Christmas M&Ms to make a good point. Yes. So hopefully this isn't... I know. And hopefully this isn't going to be like stress eating from this conversation, but yeah. So with the 10 dimes legacy illustration, we'll go ahead and kind of roll into this in light of the time. But we're going to say that for this, there is Janet, who is the mother of 2 children. Now, her husband, Rick, has already passed, and so her 2 children, Tommy and Susan, she has named them as the sole beneficiaries of her assets. And so with these 10, her hope is that, well, what she is intending is that both Tommy and Susan each receive 5 dimes as their inheritance. However, the reality is, without planning, what we've been alluding to tonight is Uncle Sam would actually get 4 dimes. Tommy and Susan then would each be left with 3 dimes, which again was not the intent. So what if instead of Tommy and Susan having to only share 6 dimes and Uncle Sam get 4, what if we could shift this through good planning and using tax beneficial financial solutions? If we could ensure that Tommy gets 5 dimes as intended, and then Susan gets 5 dimes as intended, and then Uncle Sam gets no dimes, and then even having a way of giving nonprofits, churches, and charities 6 dimes. So the question that we're going to ask is, which would you prefer? Do you want Uncle Sam to get some of those dimes? I know, no, absolutely not. And again, this is not to like overthrow the government. Yes, give Caesar what is Caesar's. However, that doesn't mean we have to give more than what is needed. So this can be done by planning ahead so that you can explore all the options that are available, because once you pass away, those options are no longer on the table, and there are limitations for beneficiaries. Is it? Okay. Well, thank you. There are some people watching out for us online, huh? Thank you for taking care of that. All right, thank you so much. I appreciate that. So what questions do you have over this illustration?
Well, if you're up to 16 dimes, and
Yes.
you only started out with 10,
Yes.
I'm confused.
Yes.
The extra 6.
Yes. No, those are great questions, and that isn't a typo. So again, there are strategies in place, and even there are ways of redirecting or reallocating where your dollars go in a planning process that can allow for almost like dollars reappearing, and it's because of where you're putting them in charities, nonprofits, and I feel like, churches, that's an important one. So by allocating money that way, it is as if you have increased your money. So yes. I don't know if you wanted to word that a little differently.
A leveraging component, so you can take some of your 4 taxable dimes essentially and create 10 tax-free dimes essentially that get split up between the people you care about, so that they don't have to pay tax on those, and then that leaves you the freedom to go ahead and leave some of those taxable type of
Was that a bit more clear that way? Yeah. It's pretty clever. All right. So this leads to our final topic of discussion. And so from here, we're going to transition over to working with a trusted advisor. And Lindsay is going to lead us there.
While we are doing the mind spot, the cool thing about these tubes, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Feed My Starving Children. Are you guys familiar with Feed My Starving Children? There's actually a permanent packing location in Richardson, and what you can do is you can give these to your kids or grandkids. They can eat all the M&Ms, and then they go around to family members asking for quarters to fill these up, and then you can take them to Feed My Starving Children, and it'll help support the meal packing there. So,
Or you could eat the M&Ms, peel the label off, and give it to the guy.
yeah, there you go. That's just me, Colin.
There's still a little bit of an audio problem on YouTube. Right? Just go ahead and see. Yep. Yeah, we're on.
It may just be, you need to put the mic closer. It just needs to be really close to your mouth.
Yeah, they're about to get an earful from me. As Jenny mentioned, I'm Lindsay, and I am actually not an advisor. I am an engagement lead with Thrivent, and so my role is to do fun things like this and figure out how our members can be creatively engaging with the local community, making sure that Thrivent's 10-dime strategy is making its way into the local community through those tax-exempt dollars that we have. So always happy to help our members figure out ways to be engaging the community meaningfully. But tonight I get the honor of kind of wrapping us up here with what it looks like to work with a trusted advisor. And I like to liken the financial planning process to a journey. And it's typically not a straight shot. It's typically a road trip that requires some meandering and some shortcuts and finding a different way forward when you hit a roadblock. I know in Dallas-Fort Worth, we constantly have construction going on and have to figure out a detour. And each leg of that journey really has its own rewards and challenges. And some of those things that can arise when you're on this journey is how will my assets grow? What about taxes? Are things going to be taxed now or later? Oh my goodness, I just hit this roadblock. What's the way forward? What does my strategy look like? What if my co-pilot passes away and I'm left to make decisions by myself? Will there be enough fuel in the car to get me to my destination? And while these questions can oftentimes seem overwhelming, I am here to tell you that there is a way forward. There is always a way forward. And the real question is this a journey that you want to be moving forward in alone? Or would you like to have a navigator or a guide alongside you, making sure that you're taking those detours in the correct direction so you end up where you intended to go instead of way over here in Lubbock, Texas? No, I'm just kidding. I'm from California, so I've had to learn a lot of detours in my time. But do you really want to be on this journey trying to figure out how to get to your destination by yourself, or does it really help to have a navigator or a guide to help you? So in a moment, we'll kind of dig into some of the characteristics of what you should be looking for in a trustworthy navigator or guide. But before we do that, I wanted to kind of point us back to some more interesting statistics. And I'm going to give you guys a chance to kind of read these for a minute, and I'll read them out loud in a moment, but want to know what kind of sticks out to you. We see that 90% of women will have to make financial decisions alone at some point in their lives. 54% of women inheriting wealth wished they knew how much they were inheriting earlier and how their spouse hoped they would use the inheritance. To me, I kind of liken this to like you have kids in the back of the car and you're trying to allocate how many snacks you're going to need from point A to point B, and your spouse doesn't tell you, hey, I ate half the snacks before we got in the car, so you're reaching back trying to get the snacks, and it's like, where are the snacks? Honey, I told you. You didn't tell me you ate half of them. Kids are screaming. It's a train wreck. 55% of women rely on knowledgeable individuals to learn more about wealth. And 80%, this was shocking to me when I was first reviewing this material, 80% of women will switch financial advisors within a year of their spouse's death. I thought that was so interesting. It's almost like, well, got to kick this navigator out of the car, can't have him singing Howdy Doody in the back seat anymore. So again, what fascinates me is that 9 out of 10 will bear will bear the sole responsibility of having to make some of those final and large financial decisions, and that 7 out of those 9 women will choose to work with somebody completely new. And so that kind of begs the question of, are women given the opportunity and the education to ensure that they are choosing a trusted navigator, a trusted guide? Because these are some pretty big decisions that are being made. So kind of in light of that, I'm giving the farm away, or giving the answers away. So when we think about a trusted navigator, a trusted guide, a trusted advisor, what are some of the characteristics? And this is the moment of audience participation. What are some things that you think of when you think of someone who's trusted? Transparency. Okay. What else? Knowledgeable. Easy to contact, and someone that will get back to you in a timely fashion. Anything else? Good listener. Yeah. These are all really important things. So there's a story I like to share. So my husband and I, in all of the chaos of 2020, God answered a 7-year prayer to be able to purchase a historic home in South Dallas, the Fair Park area, where the fair typically happens. And we finally got to close on this house, and I kind of went full Joanna Gaines mode with like Magnolia Market, and I'm like ready to paint the walls and do all these things. And my husband was like, whoa, Lindsay, we need to evaluate the foundation before we start, moving walls and laying tile and all this. And so I got into type A mode, and I had 4 different foundation companies come out to give us a bid. The first one spent about 15 minutes with me. He kind of walked through the house. He said, yeah, it looks like you're going to need some piers on the perimeter. I'll have my structural engineer come out and take a look. Wasn't really super interested. The second guy came and he goes, whoa, y'all have a basement? I'm not even going to touch this. I'll refer you to somebody else. The third guy that came out, he was a little bit more thorough than the first guy, and so I was like, okay, I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable about this. And then the fourth guy came out, and the first thing he asked me was, what do you plan on doing with the house? Are you planning to flip this house, or are you planning to stay in it? Because that is going to, I'm going to give you different advice based on what your goals are for the house. And I ended up choosing that guy because he took the time to ask me what my personal goals were for the house. And then he advised me accordingly. And so, to me, one of the most important things that we should be looking for in a trusted guide in any area of life, and probably most importantly when it comes to how we're navigating our finances, is this person interested in what is important to me? Do they ask me good questions about what is the purpose of this money? We know that money is a tool, it is not a goal. And so what are you wanting to do with this money? How are you wanting it to work for you? Whose hands do you want this tool to be put into? And they not only ask you those really compelling questions, but they invite you to ask questions as well. and they're willing to have the patience to walk through the suggestions and the strategies that they're offering you. They're engaged in the education process. So the last guy that was helping us with our foundation, I had a ton of questions for him. I was like, the second guy that came, he took a look at our basement. There's a huge crack going through it. Like, is that going to be a problem? Are we going to be wasting this, $15,000? I mean, fixing foundations is really expensive. And he said, I have a lot of experience with basements and foundations. He's like, I've done all the historic homes on Swiss Avenue. I assure you, you're in good hands. And that was very comforting for me. But he allowed me to go down in the basement. I'm like, what about that crack? What about that pier? And he's like, I gotcha. And then again, kind of going back up to they're interested in what's important to you. They advise based on your values, not their values. So another story I like to share is when my husband and I got married 7 years ago, I had never really worked with a financial advisor. He had a guy that kind of prospected him at church, if you will, right? It's one of those guys that kind of gets into the church, and it's like a referral. And he was with Edward Jones. Was he with Edward Jones? Yeah, that's irrelevant. So as we sat down and started having a conversation with this advisor, I was asking my fiance, who was then going to be my husband, I said, how did you vet this guy? Like, where did he come from? And he's like, oh, so-and-so referred him, and I've been working with him since. And I'm like, okay, well, if you trust him, I'll trust him. Well, then when I came on board at Thrivent and we decided to move everything over to Thrivent because we wanted all of those fantastic member benefits, we sat down with our new advisor, and he was like, you should not have been put into these products. This advisor made these decisions based on his values and what he could get out of it, not based on your values. And so we still have about a year left in a certain product, and then you better believe, I have an alarm set on my phone. You better believe when that alarm goes off, I'm going to be calling up my advisor and saying, okay, let's move this last piece. And so that's just all that to say is that in anything, you can have bad eggs and you can have good eggs. And you've got to crack those eggs open to see what's really inside. And so, again, a true trusted advisor is going to be someone that is going to advise you based on what's important for you. And there is no one-size-fits-all strategy. Anyone that tries to sell you a pre-packaged something or other, no. They also help provide security, and then they inspire you in a positive way. When you walk away from a session with a trusted navigator, it's like, man, I'm so excited to be on this journey. Like, yeah, we've hit some roadblocks and there's some detours, but I am really confident about where we're headed, and I am excited about how my values or our values are going to be expressed in the way that we are managing our money, which is a really exciting thing. Let's see, I want to make sure I kind of covered high level. As we're kind of looking at next steps here, number one, a little housekeeping, there is a survey in your folders. So we are always looking for feedback and always want to make sure that the education and the presentations that we're providing for people are exactly what they're looking for. And on that survey, there is a place that number one, if you have a trusted advisor, awesome. I encourage you to touch base with them. Never feel like you are imposing on your navigator. If they are not willing to meet with you to answer your questions, you may want to take some time to consider if they're the best guide for you. If you have an advisor, but you don't necessarily know that they are 100% trustworthy, interview them again. Sit down with whoever the decision maker is alongside you, if you're the sole decision maker, and ask them some questions. Do you know what my values are? We've been working together for however many years. Can you tell me what you think I value? If they can't answer that, you can give them the opportunity to have the conversation with you, but make sure that it's never too late to vet your navigator. And if you need to push them out of the car, preferably not when it's moving. No, I'm just kidding. In that journey analogy, if your navigator is not helping you get to the destination in the way that you want to get to the destination, then it's probably time to evaluate if they're the right fit. And then if you don't have a financial advisor, really part of our ethos at Thrivent is we want to make sure that every single advisor that we have in our family is someone who is trusted and someone that truly cares about helping people. And I think that, we see that in Ginny and Colin. And so, of course, I'm biased, and I'm always going to be like, Thrivent is always the way to go. But we just want to make sure that everybody is taken care of, and everybody has a navigator on their journey, a trusted advisor. Talk with your spouse or significant other about your plan. Make sure you're on the same page. Sometimes, again, we can make assumptions. Like I said at the very beginning, you thought there were snacks in the cooler for the kids, and there's no snacks. And oh my gosh, why didn't we have a conversation about this? It's important to not make assumptions and be on the same page. Again, schedule an interview with your financial professional to make sure that they are truly a trusted advisor, that they are guiding you according to your values. And then review your plan to make sure it's aligned with your values. Sometimes we can sit down and we can put a plan in place and think that, it's just all gravy and we can put it in autopilot and just, sit back and relax. But the reality is that we now live in a world where the constant is change. And so we have to be aware of the constant changes that are happening. And it's great to have a navigator that is already kind of anticipating where those different roadblocks or where those shortcuts may need to happen. And then lastly, make sure that you're implementing the strategy that matches your values. It's one thing to put a plan in place, and again, that's where a trusted advisor can come alongside and hold you accountable every 6 months. Hey, are you doing what you said you were going to do? I'm here for you. If you're not, if we need to reevaluate or course correct, we can do that. So with that being said, I think, I'm going to turn it back over to Ginny and Colin to answer any questions you may have. But again, it's just such a joy to be with you all tonight. And make sure you pass along your M&Ms to someone that needs a sugar high. All right, I'm going to pass it back over to you, Colin.
All right. Well, thank you, Lindsay. So at this point, everybody in the room. I'd like one other comment that Lindsay was referring to. Everybody in the room is perfectly capable and smart enough of doing all this stuff on your own. It's just a matter of, do you want to delegate that to somebody else so you can work on stuff that you don't want to delegate, or do you want to handle it on your own? But that all said, does anybody have any questions about anything that we talked about? Maybe revisiting how we get 16 dimes out of 10 dimes, anything along those lines. Any questions? And this is the part where you can try to stump us if you want. So.
Well, when you mentioned Uncle Sam, was your reference to the federal government or the state government? It depends on which state you're in and the inheritance taxes. Some states are more progressive than others.
Correct.
Some.
Yeah, so for Uncle Sam,
Did Uncle Sam recommend, was that federal?
it's mostly from a federal standpoint. I mean, we're blessed to be in Texas, where we don't have as much taxation in that other department, in the state department there. But and from an inheritance standpoint, we do have to look at those sort of things. But we're really focusing on the federal taxation on that, in that illustration anyway. So that's a good question. Anything else? Well, we will be out there and available if you want to try and pick our brains a little bit more. Please take the time, if you would, to fill out the evaluation, a couple questions, give us a couple of pointers, if you will, little comments, that sort of thing. I feel like I do need to apologize a little bit at the beginning. I did not realize that talking about my parents was going to choke me up as much as it did, but hopefully you guys didn't get too concerned about that. But at any rate, thank you all for your time tonight. We greatly appreciate you coming out.